This podcast is brought to you by Montecatini Eating Disorder Treatment Center, based in Carlsbad, California. Guys, I am so excited to be partnering with Montecatini for not one, but two amazing events in February. First up is the Montecatini Symposium, and I'm so excited to be giving the opening keynote address. I hope if you're a helping professional, you can join us for this day of connection, learning, and growth. And the best news is it's only $15 in advance. The second thing I'm really excited about is my first Body Kindness workshop of 2018. So on Friday, February 23rd, I will be leading a Body Kindness workshop where we will be focused on cultivating our inner caregiver. And the theme is called Live with Ease. So if you are near or can get to Carlsbad, California on Friday, February 23rd, I hope to see you there. For more information about both of these events, please visit bodykindnessbook.com/events. That's bodykindnessbook.com/events.
There's nothing wrong with you. And what's wrong is the way society and our culture make you feel like you are not doing it right, that you are less than, that you don't have the right body or the right fashion sense or the right career, you're not making enough money or you're not a good enough parent. And it sends you to those aisles in the bookstore, and it sends you to the gym and to the therapist and, and to all of these experts seeking a fix for something that maybe isn't wrong with you.
That was Sarah Knight, the New York Times bestselling author of 3 self-help books, including her latest, You Do You. And we will talk about all 3 on the show today. You know, guys, a big part of the journey of body kindness is figuring out who you are and the kind of person you want to be. And just as a heads up, there's a good amount of adult language, particularly F-bombs in this podcast, because that's part of Sarah's message. Her first book that became a bestseller was The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a F bleep. So anyway, headphones if needed. Okay, here's the thing. There is a lot to care about in this world, but if you try to care about everything, you'll care about nothing. Sarah Knight says we all have a limited budget for caring, and we need to figure out how we want to spend it. And then when we decide, set some serious boundaries so that we really embrace who we are without feeling so guilty that we aren't doing more or being more. I think you're going to love this episode. And before we get into it, just a few reminders. My annual Spiral Up Club membership has just started, and you can still get in at less than $1 a day. Plus, you'll get my 5 bonuses and a chance to win up to $1,000 in free counseling with me. So visit bodykindnessbook.com/spiralup to learn more about the membership program, the secure website, and our awesome Facebook group. Sarah, welcome to Body Kindness, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you today. As I'm moving into the new year, I am all about learning how to give a lot less fucks, preferably 0. And considering your area of expertise in the self-help category, this seems to be like something that you know a lot about. So I would love to just hear a little bit more about how you came to give fewer fucks.
Sure. Well, in the summer of 2015, I quit my job, and I had been a senior editor at one of the big New York publishing companies for 15 years. And I was just really unhappy and pretty depressed and knew that I had to make a big change with my life. And for me, that meant getting out of the corporate world and working for myself. So I had spent about a year leading up to that decision and saving money and kind of making a plan for going freelance. And I did it. And when I did, I sort of realized that I was no longer spending my time and energy and even my money, because I wasn't buying a New York City, Metro card for commuting twice a day every day for a month, on things that had been really making me unhappy. And so I had this idea for a book that started out as a parody of Marie Kondo's best-selling tidying guide, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which I'm sure everybody has heard of. But I called mine The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck. And the basis is really simple. It's about assigning Does it bring me joy, like Marie Kondo talks about with your physical possessions, or does it annoy? And my measurement is much more about, if it annoys you, get rid of it. And so I break everything down into time, energy, and money. And those are your fuck bucks. And you have to build yourself a fuck budget and decide what you're going to spend them on. And, I had this idea, and I had quit my job, and I had so much more room creatively in my own mind because I, had spent the last 15 years working on other people's books. And now I had an idea for my own. And that's kind of how it took off. And it really became a global phenomenon, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I did purchase Marie Kondo's book. And I want to say part of it was more about, okay, I was writing Body Kindness and more toward the end. So I don't really know, what I could have gleaned from it. But I was like, let's at least see kind of what somebody is talking about that tons of people are interested in. And being a mom of 2 young kids, I remember thinking, okay, she definitely doesn't have kids.
She didn't when she wrote the book. I think she has a kid now.
I know. And she's still doing it. So I guess I can't use that excuse anymore. But anyway, yeah, I mean, and it was really interesting. Like for me, I feel like I picked up a few it was kind of like, anything I would recommend to people. Like you pick up a couple things that sound like they would work for you, but don't try to feel like you can do all of it. And with the life-changing magic of not giving a fuck, your version, one of my good longtime friends was like, just read it, loved it, you need it. And so I had learned about you then. And then you came out with 2 more books after that. So can you walk us through the next one and then the next one?
Yeah. So the core concept of the life-changing magic of not giving a fuck is mental decluttering. So that has 2 steps. Step 1 is discarding and step 2 is organizing. So the life-changing magic of not giving a fuck was, I would say, primarily concerned with discarding, getting rid of those fuck bucks that you were spending on stuff that annoys you. The sequel was called Get Your Shit Together. And that is really primarily focused on organizing what you have left. So taking your time, energy, and money and deploying those resources on things that make you happy and doing it efficiently and what I call winning at life. So the great part about that book, if I do say so myself, is that the concepts are really simple and they're applicable to big life changes like the ones I made, because not only did I quit my job and start working for myself and become an author, I also moved from New York City to the Dominican Republic. I relocated my entire life with my husband. So those were big changes that I made by attacking them in small, manageable chunks, which is really the core concept of Get Your Shit Together. But you can also make small life changes. You can set any goal. It doesn't have to be a big goal. It can be a small goal, and it can be a goal for your personal life or for your professional life. Use the tactics in Get Your Shit Together to make it happen. So that's book 2. And then the third book that's out just came out a couple weeks ago, is called You Do You. And it is really, I think, a natural follow-up to the first 2, because what I like to say is that book 1 was liberating. You're giving fewer fucks, you're living your best life, you're realizing that you can let go of all of these burdens that you used to carry. And book 2 is weaponizing. It's taking your newfound supplies, your increased fuck budget, and spending it on the stuff that really means something to you and is going to change your life. And then book 3 is being really self-satisfied with the person that you've become. And in fact, the person that you always were. And it's really about, increasing your self-esteem, accepting yourself for who you are, flaws and all, and moving forward with greater confidence in your life. So it's a neat little trilogy. You can definitely read them out of order. I designed them that way. You can read one and never read the other 2, but that's kind of the progression. And I think it fits really well in terms of the progression of the last 3 years of my life.
And they are all, literally, I cannot stress this enough, how every one of them and how you've been able to identify what is really important. It really matters for somebody creating long-term behavioral changes, right? Like, I don't know how, working for a publishing company, I doubt you were a behavior change expert or a psychologist.
No. Certainly not.
But yet you managed to land on elements that are really, really, truly important for truly just having a better life, right? So with body kindness, the whole idea in writing that was about, it's about creating a better life and thinking about what's valuable and meaningful to you. And really from my standpoint as a nutrition expert and an exercise expert, that like so many people, something's wrong with my body, I'm not happy with this or that, and it would turn into a lot of self-blame and shame. And I really hated all the different ways that our culture makes a ton of money off of making us feel inferior and inadequate. So you need, this cleanse or that product and all those things that I was like, no, you actually can improve, the way you feel, do things to take better care of yourself without going to an extreme. And it involves thinking about what is meaningful to you, and because that there's an internal motivation there, and it's so important for humans to not compare themselves to other people, because you might get stuck down the wrong path. And then you end up, it's like a lot of times people are like, okay, I'm done with dieting and all that stuff, but oh my God, I don't know how to do what you're talking about. And so maybe I should go back to that. And so they end up with this whiplash of like, where am I and what am I doing? And they lack total confidence. And it's like, so what was really needed is to help people understand, like, you can control your choices, and that is pretty much about it. So if we figure out what you care about, then we can connect to those values and then create a life of meaning by living your values. And there was some like misinformation that you have to get through, but the basic wellness advice is not that complicated. So from that standpoint, and when I went through your books to prepare, it's like, how did she basically nail like these things that I feel like, I've had to study and practice for years. I was so impressed that literally what you talk about, it's not just, these are things that I personally think will work. And so I'm just going to guess and put it on paper. And oh my God, it's a bestseller in 18 languages.
Right.
Like it really is correct and good stuff. So do you have any insight for me on like how you kind of organized yourself, or what helped you get to a point to where you felt like these are the things that I need to guide people, because this is how I'm seeing them screw up?
Well, I think that a lot of my advice and my attitude comes from a place of being somewhat distrustful of the self-help industry, which is kind of an ironic stance to take given my now track record. But I think that I say actually very early on in You Do You that there's nothing wrong with you. And what's wrong is the way society and our culture make you feel like you are not doing it right, that you are less than, that you don't have the right body or the right fashion sense or the right career, you're not making enough money, or you're not a good enough parent. And it sends you to those aisles in the bookstore, and it sends you to the gym and to the therapist and to all of these experts seeking a fix for something that maybe isn't wrong with you. And I guess, it really is intuitive for me. I'm a very self-reliant person. I'm very much of the mind that, nobody can do it better than me, so I need to do it for myself. And I was able to take, it's true, my own observations from my own life and what's worked for me and what hasn't worked for me, for the first 30 years, and just kind of apply them through the lens of, you don't need an expert to tell you what to do. You need to listen to yourself, put yourself first, and I always say you have to look out for number one. So I have found that a lot of the ideas and concepts that I've put forward in my book turn out to have their roots in neuroplasticity and, all kinds of, like you said, real hardcore wellness science that I was not exposed to before. But maybe it is that outsider's perspective of being able to come in and say, you know what, I'm not totally sure I trust these self-help gurus who are just trying to sell me something and, and get my money to make me feel better about myself. Maybe I just need to feel better about myself for free and work it out. And it's like,
I love that.
I think it's great that people are buying my books. I'm so happy and satisfied. I get fan mail every day. It's wonderful to find out that I'm improving people's lives. So in that sense, I am selling them something, but I really believe that what I'm putting out there into the world is going to help people hopefully never have to buy another self-help book again, because, they've got the tools that they can use to go forward. And basically, it's not like dieting. I think that's a really good point that you made, because I've certainly yo-yo dieted my whole life, and had a lot of problems with that. And it's really about kind of what Marie Kondo does in The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, where she gives you skills and then you have them for the rest of your life. And it's, maybe you don't use them because you're tired of folding your socks in a particular way, but you do have the knowledge. And I think you can always have the knowledge of how to lose weight, take in fewer calories, eat less, move more, but it doesn't mean that you're motivated to do it or that you're going to be successful at it if you don't really want to. So my books are really about deciding what you want, like really saying, I want to be this, I want to have this, I want to do this, instead of letting other people tell you what you should want or what you should be or, what you should do.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that it's so important because, what you're basically saying is like, I have needs, I have preferences, I have interests that matter to me. And I might not be able to control everything, but for the things that I can control, I can create more of an outcome that I'm looking for, right? So it's like something's bothering me. Okay, it's okay to have something bother you. It's okay to want to change. But then what kind of comes next out of it is, what are you going to do to take care of yourself through that change? And you certainly need time and mental energy. And the more you're giving to others, the less you have available to focus on yourself.
Yeah, and the concepts of of self-care and being selfish, are pretty ever present in all three of the books. And what I just try to get people to understand is it's all an equation, and you can run out of time and energy the same way you can run out of money in your bank account. So if you're spending all of your time and energy on other things and you're not saving any for the stuff that really makes you happy or is really important to you, then you're going to be overdrawn. You are going to be overtired. You are going to be overburdened and overscheduled. And that's just not a good outcome. So I talk a lot in Get Your Shit Together about how to set goals, because that whole book is really about setting goals and achieving them. Here's how you do it. And my editor at one point in the early draft said, okay, but how do you set a goal? And I was like, what do you mean, how do you set a goal? You say, I want to do this thing. And he's like, no. I think a lot of people have a hard time really figuring out what they want. And I said, okay, well, it's pretty simple. And this is what ended up in the book as the what, why method for setting goals, which is 2 questions. What's wrong with my life? Why? And the answer to those questions are your goal. So what's wrong with my life? I don't spend enough time with my kids. Why? Because I can't seem to get out of work on time. Okay, then your goal is to get out of work on time. And then, in the book, I give a lot of advice about how to achieve goals like that, or ones that are much smaller or larger. Like I said, it's all kind of the same. It's all the same basic principles. But I do think it's important for people to just be more self-aware and to understand that it's okay to be self-aware and to be focused on your own best interests. And, we're not getting any younger, like life is finite. And so if you want to have a good one, you have to take the initiative. And that's really what all of the books are about in different ways.
Why do you think people give so many fucks in the first place?
I think it's just, human nature to, especially for women, to be people pleasers, to make sure that everything is going according to plan, to pick up the slack if they see somebody in trouble. And I think that it just gets to the point, especially in our modern age where we have much more connectivity and ability to be to have things requested of us, and people think we're working 24/7 because we're attached to our iPhones, and we'll see that email when it comes in at 9 p.m. There used to be a time in the long, long ago where, the dinner hour, you were forbidden from receiving phone calls. My parents didn't get up from the table and answer the phone during dinner. And now we have our phones, on us at every moment of the night or day. And I just think it makes people feel like they should be doing more just because they can. And I really push back against that in my life. In fact, I had a conversation with a friend yesterday who said something about she threw a last-minute Christmas party, really, planned it in 2 days, threw it the night before she was traveling here to the Dominican Republic, and was cleaning up and, taking out the trash and everything the same morning that she was going to the airport to go on this 6-week trip. And I just said, oh my God, I can't do that many things in a day. Like I don't set myself up for that kind of experience.
I want that brain. I want that thing.
I mean,
do your boundaries come natural or did you kind of learn? I mean, because working and living in New York and in publishing, I gotta imagine the demands are quite high.
Yeah, no, I was juggling way too much for too long and it really burnt me out. Okay. And I said, oh, I can't do this. This is not tenable. This is not a way for me to live. And then I did work really hard on setting boundaries and enforcing them. And I talk a lot about that in The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck.
Boundaries are essential. I mean, you're right. I mean, we only have so many hours in a day. And I do think that we can get kind of sucked into things. I have clients a lot of times will get sucked into social media and it gets in the way of their sleep and it's just the one kind of unwind thing. And so kind of at the root of it is there is a ton of things to do and we are busy, but we also don't give ourselves the time that we really need to get things done. And then whether it's optimism or kidding ourselves, I don't know, but then we just try to jam in as much as we can. And I had a podcast on last year with Bridget Schulte, who wrote The Overwhelm, and she had some statistics about that Americans work more odd hours. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the work day. Like we'll be shooting emails off at 2 a.m. and we don't know any boundaries or structure for that. And I mean, even if you're not a structured person and you're not a planner, I think that it's helpful to understand that if you want to get more sleep, you need to follow the schedule for your sleep hygiene and when you need to go to bed based on when you need to wake up. Things have to be scheduled. Sure. And that means people are going to have to hear no.
Yes. And saying no is really the biggest part of it. It's just
how do you do
no.
that? What would be your rules for? I guess in the book you talked about that you have. I love that it looks like an infographic, right? Like a drawing of yes, no. Yeah. So it's you're going to say based on fuck box, or is there something else that you could say that would help?
So I think that the biggest impediment for people to start saying no is just that they fear what's going to happen when they say no. They think that somebody's going to be mad at them. They think somebody's going to be disappointed. And I, was able to, out of desperation, start saying no a lot more. And I found that it was okay. That, nobody died on the table because I couldn't go to a party. Somebody would ask me to do a job in 5 days and I'd say I need 10 and it was okay. I think what we don't give other people enough credit for is flexibility. And just because I've asked a question doesn't mean I'm expecting any particular answer. Every invitation that's been issued is not an invitation that you have to accept. And so I say that you might not think that it's easy to say no, but it's very simple. It is both a complete sentence and an acceptable answer. And once you start, I believe that you will find that your life gets much better. because people won't be angry at you. The world will not end. You won't stop getting invited to things. Now, I also talk a lot in the books about honesty and politeness. I don't think that you can just start going through your life slashing and burning your friends and family and work commitments and saying no in a nasty way, saying I'm never coming to a dinner party at your house because I hate your girlfriend and I don't want to get stuck talking to her. Just a polite, timely no thank you, I can't make it, is a perfectly fine response. Or no thank you, I don't want to do that. Or no thank you, I can't afford that. You don't have to be, as I say in the first book, an asshole about it. You can just politely and honestly start declining things or setting boundaries on your time. And I have to do that all the time now because I do get a lot of requests for interviews and original pieces. And, there's a lot of demands on my time that are different than the demands on my time were when I was, working in a corporate environment, but they're still there. And sometimes I have to say, I am not going to be able to do that. I did that yesterday. My publicist sent me a last minute, this needs to be done by 11 a.m. Can you do it? And I said, no, I can't. So, and that was okay. Nobody got mad at me.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'll talk to clients about is, well, first of all, no is a complete sentence, and without it coming off as jerky, but that even, if you want to say something else after that, like you said, a kind and even a vague sort of like, nope, or no to something, right? I'm sorry, I have another appointment. And that appointment could be you're going to get a massage or you're getting your workout in or you're cleaning out your closet because it's annoying you, right? But we all understand other people have appointments. So it could be something like that. And I think at the same time, when people struggle with the boundaries of saying no, the issue is they're not letting themselves, it's almost like they're not willing to say no for themselves, because I think it gets into that, well, what does this say about me as a person, right? So it's this fear of the shame of that, now I'm not a good friend, and I have struggled with the not enoughness, right? I'm not a mom enough. I'm not a counselor enough, anything, spouse enough, you name it. It could have that label. And so I think this idea, which reminds me, I love them all. I connect the most with You Do You because of the self-acceptance, right? And this idea that I am enough and whole exactly as I am right now. But if I think of things that are bothering me, things that I would like to change in life, it is absolutely okay to want to change things. I help people focus on things you can actually control. So it's hard to kind of exist in our culture and not say, gee, it'd be great if I lost 10 pounds or whatever. And I'm against the idea that you have control over your weight, you control your choices. And, I want people to do things that they can feel good about in the long run. So kind of learning, maybe different ways of scheduling your time that might help you do more self-care practices. And some people might lose weight, some won't. But at the end of the day, there should be other reasons for how you feel like life is better, and that those are the best kind of goals anyway. But you don't really get to feel that better life unless you start with fully accepting who you already are in sort of a befriend yourself kind of way. So what would you say to that as far as what they're going to get in You Do You?
Well, for me, I struggled a lot with my weight all through my life and with, the same kind of self-esteem issues that I think plague a lot of people, children, adults, men and women alike. And what I found for myself was exactly what you said. There are certain things that I can control, and there are other things that I can't. And when I realized that there was going to be there's no possibility short of, extensive plastic surgery that is going to change the fundamental size and shape of my body, the way my muscles are put together, the way just everything works on my body is individual to me, and it is never going to be a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, and it's never going to be Kate Moss, and it's never going to be, I'm not going to suddenly grow 10 inches and lose 50 pounds. It's just not going It's not going to happen. So once I accepted, okay, this is who I am and this is what I've got to work with. And that's really, part of the subtitle of the book is, how to be who you are and use what you've got to get what you want. It's not about trying to have things that you can't have. It's not about, it's the least aspirational book out there, I think, because it's really about accepting what you already have. And, and I think it's really valuable. I've seen so many people struggle with self-esteem issues, and just, I think the message of accepting yourself for who you are, flaws and all, is really important. And, I wish that somebody had told me that when I was 15, but
or even younger.
Never too late.
You talked in the book about being 9 and somebody was teasing you about your appearance, 9 or 10. Yeah. And I was 9 when I started trying diets thinking they were a healthy thing. And it definitely was appearance related. And, even in today's culture, like you talk about, there's an unrealistic ideal and we make judgments about, there's just this weird twist that your appearance can somehow determine health. And that's not even true at all. And
your value as a person.
Yes. Thank you. Absolutely. I think that's what a lot of the listeners for Body kind of struggle with, is that, but I do want to change things. So why should I accept myself? And it's like, over and again, like, look, that's not apathy. Like, why bother? It's kindness. It's being compassionate. So you do set the boundaries. What do I want? What really matters to me? And just to find other reasons to feel good about how you're spending your time, because it's just, you could suffer a lot needlessly and more harm your mental health just because you stayed so focused on the appearance aspect.
Yeah. And I just think, setting unrealistic expectations doesn't help anybody. It's better to be realistic about, as I said, who you are and what you have to work with, and be the best version of yourself you can be within those bounds. But if you set yourself an impossible goal, then you will never reach it and you will always feel like you're falling short. So a lot of what I talk about in all of my books is also, just being realistic and knowing what your own boundaries are in terms of what you can and can't achieve. And I think that some people, especially in the self-help world, there's a lot of, people who are all about kind of greater and greater achievement and being your best and being better and outdoing yourself, whether it's health and fitness or financial success or whatever. And I just am a much more realistic, pragmatic person. Like, I know what I can do and what I can't do, and it's maybe, I don't play games that I can't win is kind of, a thing that I often think. I don't want to put myself, because I did for so long put myself into positions specifically with regard to, weight loss and fitness that were unrealistic and untenable. And I was always going to wind up falling short. And so in that aspect of my life, but also in every other aspect of my life, I've come to this conclusion that I'm going to do the best with what I can, and I'm not going to worry about what I can't do, what I'm not capable of doing. And You Do You is about a lot of aspects of one's personality that don't necessarily need to be changed. I am a natural pessimist. That's just who I am. And if people want to say, oh, you're being so negative, well, it actually helps me in a lot of ways. And I write about that in that chapter of the book. Being a pessimist helps me prepare for things. Being a pessimist helps me be on time because I'm always sure that there's going to be, some problem. And so I'm always a little bit early. There's a lot of reasons that it works for me. And so I'm not going to set myself the unrealistic goal of trying to wake up every day and become a bright-eyed optimist like my husband, because it's not going to happen.
Never.
Yeah.
And you're not being pessimistic about that.
Correct.
I had this new client, and the first thing she said to me was, I'm an extreme perfectionist. And I said, oh yeah, extreme perfectionism, when perfectionism just isn't enough.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I know that woman.
So I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask, just if you had sort of a quick tip or a book reference, just of things that I hear often. And so one is like people are struggling with how to deal with that voice in their head, that critic, that perfectionist. Anything that has worked for you or that you would like to point us to for that?
Yeah, so I call myself a recovering perfectionist because I don't think that that impulse is ever really going to leave me. But I've started when I find myself starting to get anxious about something, I really take my own advice and I say, you have to stop giving a fuck about things you can't control and only give a fuck about the things you can. And that usually tends to calm me down a few notches when for example, my husband and I are doing the holiday here in the Dominican Republic this year, which means we're not traveling to see my family like we usually do, but we're doing this big kind of expat gathering, and it's going to be a lot of prep and a lot of cooking, and you can't really necessarily get everything you need at the grocery store in this town. Sometimes it's there and sometimes it isn't, and I can't let myself get too focused carrying out the plan perfectly because I know that I can't control whether or not the grocery store has heavy cream this week, because it just might not. So I really think that my perfectionist tendencies are well tempered by remembering that there are things I can't control and that I just can't worry about them.
So you notice the thought in your head and then think about, okay, there are things I can't control. This isn't worth worrying about. So let me just let that go and move on. Let me keep focus on what I need to do. That is really good advice and really helpful. It's you don't have to kind of entangle yourself with those unhelpful, judgmental, negative thoughts because they're not going to lead to anywhere good. They're just going to waste your mental energy, make it harder to do what you need to do.
Yeah, and if you think about it, in terms of the character that I write about in You Do You, who I call Judgy McJudgerson,
Yep.
You wouldn't appreciate it if somebody else was telling you that you were doing it wrong or you weren't going to, that you weren't going to be perfect. Like, you wouldn't appreciate that judgment coming from someone else. So why would you impose it on yourself?
Exactly. I love anytime I can kind of do that comparison. It's like, it's like there's no special rules for you. So, you got to give yourself that same grace and kindness that you would give to others. What about people often ask about, like, how do I let shit go?
I mean, I do think that this is something that comes a little bit more with age. I think that when you're younger, you think that you're, invincible and you haven't experienced as many failures yet because you haven't had as much life experience yet. And as you move forward in life and you encounter big life events, you become a parent or you get married or you get your career underway or you move to a foreign country or you experience, loss, you become a little bit, at least I have become a little bit more accepting of the fact that there's just some shit that doesn't matter and that there's no point, like I've said, in spending my fuck bucks, my time and energy thinking about it, dwelling on it, worrying about it. Just got to let it go. And I take a cue from Ina Garten, the Barefoot Contessa.
Oh, yeah.
She says that anytime she plans a dinner party, she crosses 2 items off the menu before she even goes shopping. And her life just got easier.
She just gets rid of it.
She does all that planning and then she's like, you know what? I'm going to make my life easier. I'm going to cross 2 things off. And so I think about that a lot with regard to, shit that just doesn't matter. And I'll have my kind of to-do list for the day. And then I'll be like, I don't need to do that thing. Why is that thing hanging out on my list? That doesn't matter. It's something here in the Dominican Republic. You're really at the mercy of the weather. And why would I kind of go over and like mop that spot on the deck that's been bothering me when we're just going to have a torrential downpour one of these nights and it's going to go away on its own. So let me take that thing off my list. And I find that to be a really helpful tactic to just give yourself the gift of removing things from your shit I have to do list.
Yeah. And just in reminding yourself of the trade-off, right? Like making a choice about what do you care about more because It's something has got to give and will give. So as we were talking today, I was thinking about what you were sharing and sort of how could I take that and apply it to, this idea that people, with it being New Year, if they do have goals or trying to make changes and, sort of in that health and self-care space, so with life-changing magic and the focus on mental decluttering, that it's the idea where you could kind of go through, and if there's anything unhelpful, whether it's a subscription or e-newsletter or old diet books, like anything like that, where it's just like, this stuff isn't helpful and staring at me is not making me feel any better. So maybe I need to kind of clean up my environment and think about what it is I really care about and what really matters to me and why. And that could kind of be one step that would be helpful. Then for get your shit together, it's like, okay, now I have some thoughts on the things that really matter to me and why, right? So now you're talking about your values, what's important, and these are things that you think create a meaningful life. And I feel like I'm constantly trying to get people to see, like, look, I am a health expert and I'm telling you, don't spend so much time on health. Like there are so many other things you could be doing with your time and you'll drive yourself crazy. You're really going to regret if looking back and it's this shell of like, gosh, I spent so much time focused on my appearance. So it's like even this ability to say, do I have hobbies? Or what would a hobby be? Do I have an interest? Is there something that I'd like to do that would make my life more rich? And the idea is because you've done the decluttering and that you've said, okay, I don't have to put all this effort into my appearance. I can cook and eat balanced and go out for pizza. I like how you're like, I'll have pizza. Give me 2 slices with the cheese, but just this idea of flexibility and how important it is to have flexibility in your life and get your shit together would help with that. And then the third, you do you, which is the most recent one. I love the idea of just kind of letting people know that like, no matter what, you are already enough. And like as a human, even going through the change process, you're going to make mistakes. And so having, mistakes help you learn and grow. And the Judgy McJudgerson is not going to help you get to your better life. So if you're like, I'm already good now. And these things I want to try to cultivate, I do think will make my life better. But I can also feel satisfied with where I'm at today. I don't have to trade that in order to be driven to pursue other things, right? You can kind of make that more about interest.
I talk about what I call mental redecorating, which is the sort of offshoot of mental decluttering of the first 2 books. In You Do You, I talk about how you can take these elements of your personality or your life or your body that already exist, and you can just sort of refresh the way you look at or deal with them so that you are improving your day-to-day life. So when it comes to physicality, you can stop dwelling on those comments that somebody made about you when you were 9 years old or when you were 29 years old, because those comments are like unflattering photos that you would never hang up in your house. And instead, you can focus on the compliments that you get. If somebody says, you just have such a way with eye makeup, you can say thank you. And you can think about that instead of somebody saying, hey, those jeans make your ass look big.
Jerk.
And really refocus your own, what's already there in your head. And I call it, in the book, I call it feng shui with a side of fuck that shit. Because one of the principles of feng shui in home design is to take existing objects and move them in such a way that their energy works with you instead of against you. And so I think you can take what is already true and what you already have in your own mind and reshuffle it and refresh it and look at it in a different way and treat it in a different way and act on it in a different way to make things work for you instead of against you.
Yeah. And I am all for just applying as many zero fucks to other people's judgments of you, your body, what you do with food, exercise, anything like that. It just doesn't matter, what other people think. I mean, sometimes I'll tell people a simple, okay, good for them, not for me. Just let yourself move on. Like that energy is just, it's forcing you to go down that shame spiral because you take what is being said as, okay, so this means I'm a bad person, as opposed to, God, they're being a jerk, right? Or even maybe a little empathy and like, gee, I wonder what's going on with them that would make them be so harsh toward me.
Yeah. And what I say in You Do You is this book isn't about changing who you are. It's about changing how you feel about who you are and changing how you deal with how other people feel about who you are. So that's really the overarching message of the whole book.
And they really are all great. And I've so enjoyed talking with you today. And I'm going to make sure that we share the link to the books. And I also want to let listeners know, how can they get in touch with you and kind of stay connected to all your wonderful works?
Well, you can go to my website, which is sarahknightauthor.com, and that has all of the information about all of my books. It has a sign up for my newsletter, which is a tiny letter. It has my TED Talk, which is 12 minutes of condensed, not giving a fuck magic. And it has links to all of my other writing. So I write for a lot of different magazines. I write on Medium. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at MCSnugs, which is MCSNUGZ. And I'm very prolific on both of those platforms. So there's a lot going on in my world, and it's a mix of book promotion and humor and links to my other pieces and lots of pictures of really tiny lizards that live in my house.
Even a better reason.
Yeah.
Well, it was so much fun chatting with you today, and I really want to thank you for taking the time to help us learn and grow here on Body Kindness.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And that's our show. Let's continue this conversation in our Facebook group. Just search Body Kindness Podcast and ask to join the group. We also love ratings and reviews. Please subscribe to the Body Kindness Podcast and give us an honest rating and review. And if you can, tell a friend. If you'd like to support the podcast for the 2018 season, please donate at gofundme.com/bodykindness.